Hey everybody, Royce from Hill Country CNC and Woodworking, and today I'm going to show you how I make US flags with an embedded logo. So stick with me. This is the long route. I'm going to show you everything. So I'm going to start off with please like and subscribe. It's how I grow as a creator, and leave comments if you have any questions. I will answer them, I promise. The first portion of this is me just dimensioning the lumber and gluing it up so that I can make the flag. If you want to skip through all of that good woodwork, go ahead and look below and you'll be able to find the chapters. So I'm just doing the layout, making sure I've got the right dimensions that I need. Take it over to the joiner. Oh, but what? No. We're going to make sure that the joiner square. Square matters. I use the joiner just to give me a good square edge. That will help me during glue up and make sure that my overall board ends up flat. So onto the planer. Obviously we need a good flat surface for CNC work. A lot of times I'll go ahead and glue everything up and then take it to my CNC and surface it using a surface bit. But I am more comfortable doing it this way. So for this project I said, hey, let's just use a planer. Onto the table saw. I'm going to go ahead and take that right angle that I got off the joiner and basically pushing it through the table saw will give me a right angle on the other side. This will allow that perfect glue up. This little situation here is just me figuring out which board should really go together and what I want to get rid of. You want the cupping surfaces to oppose each other, so they should stagger, one cupping one direction, one cupping the other direction. And then you also want, any imperfections that you can get rid of, put those down if possible. You also see that one board right there that my hand's on bends a little bit. That's not a crisis because once we clamp it up, I'll be able to smush that in place and then glue it and it won't move. I number my board faces just so I can match them up later. It makes it much easier to move things around. Probably a million right answers of how to do this. A lot of times I actually do use dominoes. I drill my dominoes and plug everything together, and that is a rock solid joint. But I'll also say that just gluing it just like I'm doing here, it does not fail. The flags do not break. I have never had one of these break. So why go through that extra time and headache of doing the dominoes if you just need to glue it? I also see people put glue on both sides of the boards, and I'm like, no, you really just need it one side per surface. did a little bit of time-lapse magic there. Obviously you didn't see me put together the upper clamps, but they were just to apply a little down pressure. So I just do a little cleanup on the squeeze out, and then it's back over to the table saw where I'm going to give it a 90-degree angle, which is really just for me to align my workpiece to my CNC better. Anything with a beautiful finish has had hours of sanding. This is probably 1/25 sped up 500%, just so we all don't fall asleep here. This was a ton of sanding, but I think it turned out really good. I painted the material, let it dry for 24 hours, and then went ahead and started putting on the Oramask 813. This is a great asset. It allows you to basically mask something off, cut it, and then paint again. Placing it down can be challenging, but it's worth it. That is a drywall sander. It's the sander pad. You obviously don't have your sandpaper attached to that. It works wonderfully. Jumping into VCarve Pro, this is just setting up. I have my dimensions, the 47, 27, and 1. That's larger than my actual flag size. Positioning, and then material settings. I always put it on the actual wood that I'm using, but it's not needed. The next step, I left some of it out. I just buy files like this off of Etsy. They're fast, they're accurate, and you know, most of them cost like $1.99. So for something simple like this, just grab this off of Etsy. That they all work. It's an SVG. And then I went ahead and centered it, and then I am making a box with my exact dimensions. It's mostly just for me to make sure that I have what I want. My flag is 45.6 by 24, so I now have that box, and I move it over, center it, and then I can dimension my flag exactly to what I want it to match to. For those wondering how the flag is slightly moving, I'm pressing Control and using the arrow keys to get the micro adjustments like that. Grab the little diagonal, it'll increase your size and keep everything dimensionally correct. And then grabbing the side piece is actually going to make it not dimensionally correct, but it's such a minute change that shouldn't matter for this. Something to think about when you're doing CNC work is that the bits are round, and if you leave it the way it is, the edges will just be rounded. It's not a problem. Some people do it. I didn't want to do it on this flag. So what I'm doing is I'm extending the cutting area and that will basically put the rounded area into the board that we're cutting off. You will see that there's going to be a little bit of it over by the field of stars, but to me that is very negligible. Alright, we're going to go ahead and jump over to the stars, and that'll be a VCarve. My start depth is always 0, and then for this one I chose 0.04 as the cut depth, or the flat depth. I had done experiments with this, so you kind of have to figure out with your bit and the angle of the bit what you want to do. For me, I just took all those stars and assigned a different depth of cut for each star. You can actually go back and look at one of my other videos for that. So real quick, on the VCarve, it's easy. All you have to do is set the depth, the flat depth, set your tool, use no clearance tools. The rest of that doesn't matter, and then name it, and you're good to go. I always name my files what it is, what kind of cut it is, the bit number, and then the depth of cut. Moving on, we're just going to check all this out, run a preview, and boom, there you go. It's real simple at this point. The next step is just importing your logo. I make my logos generally on Adobe Illustrator. It's what I find to be the easiest tool. You can do things like image trace and stuff like that, but they never turn out with as much quality. So Adobe Illustrator is the way to go. I center it, and then we're just going to resize it to what you think is right. I thought having a little bit on both sides of the stripes would be smart. As you can see, it takes a little finesse, but eventually I got it and then centered it vertically. Once you have your logo centered, you're going to have to do an offset, or you're going to have overlapping lines of cutting. So I did the offset vector outwards at a 3/8 of an inch, and you want to keep the sharp offset corners. So you have this little extra line here. And then go ahead and select that line and select the lines of all your little flag stripes. Very generous pause here. Right? Close that out and then go over to weld. Boop. Click weld. And there you go. You have your separate logo standing out from the stripes. No real reason, but I decided to go ahead and do the logo next because, hey, that's fun, right? Jumped over in VCarve. Start depth same, flat depth 0.17. That's very shallow, but I'm using a smaller bit. Amana tools 45626K with a clearance of 46200K. That is an 1/8 inch downcut bit. So you'll have a little bit taken out there and then cleaned up with the 90-degree VCarve. Everything else is pretty much the same. You don't have to change in it. You don't have to do the ramp at all. And the name change, but I'm going to pause and you'll see why. Go ahead and calculate. Here you see we got VCarve 1 clear 1 and VCarve, and we'll change that in a minute. Go ahead and press play. And we get to see the lovely, I wish there was a notch in between this speed and super fast. Go ahead and do the V-carve and you get to watch all the gloriousness because this is awesome. Nice. And now we'll go over here and rename them. I'm going to go ahead and go with my same pattern, what it is, what kind of cut it is, the bit being used, and the depth. When you look at this on your machine, it's just so much more clear than seeing all this VCarve 1, VCarve 2. So I like to be very specific about it. It's also easier when you're looking at stuff months later to understand what you're looking at. Rename both, and then I realized, hey, that's not the right bit for that. So went back and changed that. Moving on to the stripes, we just select it and go ahead to the pocket toolpath. Still cutting at 0.17. I have my 1/4 inch downcut spiral this time. Everything else is about the same, but I want you to pay attention to what happens here. Oops, what just happened? We just lost the entire patch. Very often overlooked problem. So what we do is just go back, select our stripes, and select the patch on the outer side, and run it again. If we had planned this better, it would work better. There we go. Everything good. Calculate again. There you go. There's your patch. And now I'm just going to put it all together because, you know, it's kind of fun. And just like with the rest of them, we're going to go ahead and go back and rename everything. Pretty simple. This is our stripes. I'm using a downcut bit. My typing could be slower. It's 46202K, which is Amana tools. If you're wondering, I pretty much just use Amana tool bits. They're what I trust. That's all I'm saying. They're what I trust. If you go to my website and to my blog where I explain everything I do on CNC. Moving on, we're going to do the cutout of the flag. We do that tool path, and then you need to do your 0.0 and then your cut depth. My cut depth was 1 inch. I'm using my 1/4 inch bit, which is the 202K. 20 passes. I'm very conservative on my cutting because honestly I don't want to break a bit or ruin the entire project. I'm gonna go on the outside. I don't normally do tabs, and then I'm gonna add a ramp. I don't see the point in the zigzag, so I do the smooth. 1 inch is fine when you're cutting so conservatively, and then it's just naming it. So just a quick preview, we're going to look at it. I sped it up all the way so you didn't have to watch the 20 laps around. It looks good, no big problems. Like I said, go ahead and name it the same way so you can find it when it's on your CNC. This is our cutout, downcut bit 46202K, and depth of 1 inch. So now you're thinking, all right, we're done, but we're really not. We have one more cut to do. If you think about the Oramask and everything that we've done, we have to find a way to paint the entire flag and then cut the Oramask off and then paint the logo area. So this is what we're doing here. To solve this, we're going to go ahead and grab that outer line of the logo, do another offset, but this time we're going to do it inwards, and I'm doing it for 0.128, which is just a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. You might see where I'm going with this. Then I'm going to go to the 2D profile toolpath and go 0.01, so I'm just barely scratching the surface with this bit. I realized when I was renaming it that I messed up a little bit, so I went ahead and renamed it Oramask Downcut 4.6 200K, which is my 1/8 inch bit. But if you recall what I just did 30 seconds ago, I did the 202K. So we'll go ahead and go back there and fix that. So I grabbed my 4.6 200K downcut bit and changed it out and recalculated, and there you go. We'll go ahead and reset, play it, and you'll see that it just barely scratches the surface. That's perfect. Last step I'm going to do on the VCarve is just walk you through how I save everything. So you go up here, click the save button on all toolpaths. You can do the selected toolpath and do it one by one, which is safe. I don't like putting it all in one file. I generally, when I have something big like this, I put it in multiple files, but I don't group it. I have my CNC machine, my post processor. I always use GRBL, and then click Save Toolpaths. Just a quick reminder, I always speed up my videos or we would be here all day. So it's actually not cutting quite that quickly, but this is our Oramask cut where we're cutting 0.01 just to get rid of the top, and you'll see where I go with that. Did a little vacuum just to clean up everything, and then hit my dust collector button. That's a pretty cool trick. It's a real cheap item you can buy and connect your dust collector to. I'll have it linked in my blog. A little paint up here. For this project I ended up using spray paint. It's not my preferred. I like using HPLV sprayers, but for the color that I needed, I couldn't find what I needed for that, so I ended up using spray paint, and it didn't turn out perfect, but it was pretty nice. And this is where the CNC starts to shine. We're doing our roughing. Looks like nothing, but you'll see as soon as we switch over to the V-bit that CNC is sometimes just the way to go. Switching over to the second V-bit, and we go ahead and cut our logo design. Wanted to mention those little fuzzies sticking up there, they look like a big problem. But the truth of the matter is that I ended up taking them off with my fingernail. They came off really easy. It was just the bonding, I guess, of the paint. Switched over to the stars. This is my favorite part to watch. However, it does take a long time. If you happen to wonder why I use two different V-bits, one is just a much smaller version so you can get in tight, and I use that for the logo. And then the second one that we're using now is a much larger bit. I should have showed a picture of it. It's a much larger bit that allows for the perfect angles on the stars. This is just the cutout portion. I don't think it's not rocket science. I stand next to my machine when I'm doing the cutout. Because let me tell you, if something is going to go wrong, it is at this point. This is when you're going to have the most velocity moving your workpiece. And the number one way that I've seen that bits break is when the workpiece moves. That's why I use double-sided tape and screw the board down if possible. Not every job is going to be able to do that, but for this one I was able to do both, so this sucker is not going to move. And then just a little bit of the finished front. Moving on, I went ahead and flipped it over super carefully. Obviously you don't want to scratch up your paint job, but my MDF spoil board generally prevents that from happening. And then I took the actual rails that I had just cut off and re-secured the flag so I could do the keyholes. Back in VCarve, we're going to go ahead and set up our keyhole registry, and basically I'm just using the same material that I did the flag with. I'm making a rectangle, and this rectangle is just for dimensional properties, so I know kind of what I'm working with. Probably should have snipped this part, but sorry, I didn't. So I'm going to go back and make a second rectangle. This time I'm going to do 16 inches in width, and I think I did 2 inches. Come on, press the button. 2, yep. So this is my internal rectangle, and you'll see why I use this in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and move them over and then center everything. Everything is centered now, so I'm going to go ahead and select my inner rectangle and just use the up arrow to move it 1/3 of the way up, which will just give me a nice location for the keyholes once they're cut. Next, I'm going to use the line tool and zoom in at the same time. I use the scroll button on my mouse to zoom in, and I'm just going to draw a line that matches my box. And then the hard part, I am going to make a super small line grab my selector tool, and don't do this, don't grab the diagonal selector, grab the one in the middle, which I will get to eventually. Come on, buddy, there you go. So you really just want to make this line really small. The smaller it is, the better. I mean, really a 1/16 of an inch, maybe a 32nd of an inch would work perfectly for this keyhole operation. Go back, grab your line, hit the node that you just left off on right there, and bring it back to your start point. Make sure that it's perpendicular to your start point, that little guideline, and good to go. Grab all 3 of the lines that you just made by pressing Shift while clicking them. And once you have all 3, do Control C, so you're going to copy it all, and then Control V to paste. So we have a second one, and now we're going to bring it all the way over to the other side. Once you have it on the other side, you just want to align it perfectly. You can also do that with the arrows, or just move it over and it should snap. This will give you two parallel boxes. Well, they're not boxes because there are only 3 lines. Go ahead, zoom out. Select your original box and delete it. You don't need it anymore. So you'll go ahead and select both of them, go over to your tool paths and select the profile tool path. I already have one made, so I click on it again. It'll show me the stuff that I already did. That 0.3438, I'd like to just tell you I did some fancy math one day and that's what I got, so I've just stuck with it. The tool I use is the Amana tools 45652. It works great, never had a problem with it. You want to cut on the line. You don't need to worry about plunge moves. You don't need to worry about tabs, obviously. And go ahead and name it. I say dual keyhole, the bit, and then the depth, and then calculate. At this point, you'll be able to see your tool path, and it doesn't look like much, but it will do what you want it to do. So I'm knocking down the speed just so you can see. We go in, boom. Now you're like, that is not a keyhole, that is just a hole, right? Well, you got to remember that the computer doesn't exactly see that as a keyhole bit, but the plunge down 0.3438 will cause that cutter to go beneath the surface, move up, move back down, and then come out. So that part that shouldn't be there on the screen is not there on the actual board. I use straight edges to find the center of my board, and it takes a while. I'm sorry, some of this video is like paint drying, but this is how I roll. Go ahead and probe so you get your surface level. So obviously it's going to slide over to each side, and this is what I was talking about. It cuts down, moves up, moves back down, and then back up, and that leaves that keyhole signature. So other than a couple fuzzies, it's a perfect keyhole, and the customers love that. Moving on, I'm lasering my logo and QR code and a message to the person that this gift is going to. It's a great touch. It's a great way to kind of advertise, and it kind of makes you look a little better than, you know, just the other maker out there. Sorry, I didn't have better video of this. I didn't realize it was out of focus until it was pretty much too late. If you're curious about lasers and using it with your woodworking, this is a OMTech 60 watt MF2440, and I'll add all that to the information. It's a CO2 laser, really great asset to have. And that's it, folks. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. It's how we get attention here on YouTube. Help me defeat the algorithm so more people can find my work. I truly enjoy doing YouTube just as much as I enjoy making things.